I think we're doomed.
So I would imagine over time we're going to, unless we all die out.
Look at how, so we glorify the past, but we don't look at what was unsettling about it as well.
And we definitely like fictionalize and romanticize the future, but often there's an element of fear in there because the future is unknown. But the past is often in many ways also unknowable. But we seem to think that we have a good idea of what that is.
I think what I've noticed is everything old is new again. There's always a cycle, and it just seems to repeat itself. How we handle it, I think, as a society, is the same. We don't seem to learn from each stage that we go through. I was a really young kid during 1968, and it did feel like the world was ending, And then there was the 90s with Gulf War I. It felt like the world was ending. We didn't seem to adjust how we react to these things, and here we are again. The world is ending.
I've been thinking about this a lot as like a millennial, because 10 years ago, right, millennials, we were like the young generation. And so the media always talked about us as like, we're destroying industries and we're lazy and we're self-obsessed. And now we've graduated to be the middle-aged generation, and the same conversations, the exact same headlines about Gen Z. And so I'm already seeing that. I'm thinking, okay, well, this is just starting all over again, right? And then you look back at stuff from the 60s and discussions about like, hippies. It's the exact same repetition. I think it's part of aging is to start to like hand wring and fret about the next generation.
There are conversations we remember, the ones that changed something, the ones that stayed with us. And then there are the others, the ones that repeat, echo, and circle back. The same questions, the same answers, the same silences.
I remember vaguely some of the conversations I had with my parents coming home from school, and they were conversations about what we did, what the world was like, what music was hot, what TV shows were hot. And I think a lot of those same conversations happen today. Go on here and go on in Iran and around the world. They haven't changed all that much.
I can't help but worry that their life is a lot more complicated than mine ever was. I mean, it's just a lot more complicated.
A lot less private.
Yeah. There was an article in the Times today about how to free yourself from the addiction of cell phones and social media, and it was really kind of frightening to read about how we're concerned about our bodies, staying physically fit, and that's all good. But what about your brain losing its? We've lost the ability to concentrate. You have your phone at your and you're waiting because you're anticipating. It affects you physiologically even.
I worry about the future of AI. Is it going to take away a lot of jobs and what that means? But it's part of the new revolution in technology. And I worry about that for the next generation and whether there'll be jobs that kids are, if you come to UD and you are communication majors, what do you tell a kid who's coming tomorrow, who's been accepted, and a kid asks the question, what kind of jobs do you get in communication? And there are a lot of them, but it's not as plentiful as it was before.
I also think that we're kind of in like a funny position right now, especially with things like AI and technology, where there's a lot of like, what can we do, not what should we do? And I think we're missing, as an educator, as a college professor, I'm looking at things and feeling a bit of regret for the loss of a lot of humanities and social science training as like a broad base for all people. I see what's going on in Silicon Valley, and I'm like, wow, if you just took like a really like philosophy 101, bioethics 101, so many of the stuff, I think we would think, wow, we should be asking ourselves why we do things, not if we could, right? There's a real difference between could and should in a lot of the current technology, especially with AI.
I must say, I'm glad I'm nearer the end of my career than the beginning, because I think AI is going to, I don't know that it will put authors out of business, but it will certainly make it harder for truly creative, out-of-the-mind work to find its place.
Has changed what we see on social media drastically, to the point now where I ask every time I see something, is that real or is it AI? And I'm no longer as interested in what I'm seeing, because my immediate reaction is to be skeptical and think that might be fake. And I think eventually a lot of people are going to feel like that, and they're going to turn away from it. So, we're seeing some of the results, the negative results of our embracing of AI, to the point where we don't know what we're seeing anymore and what we can believe.
I think AI can be helpful, but I don't think we should rely on AI for creative projects like writing, because I think humans still have that creative touch that AI doesn't have.
Do you think that a typical day for a kid in school is going to look drastically different than it did for you in 20 years?
Yeah, I think especially, it's already looking really different. Everybody already has iPads and laptops and stuff that they can bring home. That wasn't a thing in my day. And I also had to do everything on paper, took notes on paper, exams on paper. That's already not a thing anymore.
I think, say for my generation of years, I think maybe hopes and dreams have changed in that people of your generation can dream bigger earlier.
Make your own invention.
A spaceship.
A spaceship, where would it go?
To the moon.
To the moon.
If I could invent anything, I would invent a house that can, when you press a button, it can turn into a dollhouse and you can bring it anywhere.
I feel like now when people are bored, they just go on their phones or and scroll. But back in the day, people would go to the mall and just third spaces. Those aren't a thing anymore because our third space is our phone. And so people used to go to the mall or go to the park and hang out, and they just don't do that anymore.
There is a political theory that that's part of our problem, and that problem is that we have no community collected experience anymore. We're not all getting up in the middle of the night to watch John Glenn. We're not all watching the towers fall together and finding that to be a common experience as it was. And that is a difference. We don't have must-see TV. We're not all watching the same television program at the same time, the finale of MASH or the first Survivor finale. Now there's so many choices, there's no commonality. And that, I think, is only making us more divided and therefore less directed towards a common goal. I think that nostalgia is a part of each generation. My parents were nostalgic for the pre-World War II days. My generation was nostalgic for how things were in the 50s when, we thought everything was calm, but it wasn't. But we thought it was. The memory and the institutional knowledge of what that time was like glorified it. Much like your generation thinks that, I guess it's the early 2000s that you're celebrating. Plaid is back. But if I wore plaid, I'm not going back there. But everything comes back in a cycle.
I mean, certainly standing in 2025, it feels like we're in this precipice of really, really rapid change. But I think people have felt that way at many points, right? And we also often kind of assume this natural march of progress, but there's been so many times in the past where things have collapsed, reverted, right? Even if I look at the archaeological record, we have these things that we define as modern behavior in early modern humans, and it would pop up in parts of Africa and then disappear. People are innovating these things, and then something happens and there's a collapse. So progress is not this linear march, right? It's absolutely, there's many times where it's one step forward, three steps back. And so we're at a period right now, it seems like, in our own lifetimes, like where things are changing really rapidly.
When I was a student here, I had a professor, Elliot Schreiber, in the communication department, and he said, I want you to imagine the day when we have over 100 television channels, and the room started to giggle. A channel just for music, one for shopping, one just for news, one that you could get everything that you want on that channel. You just have to tune to it. And your home will have an information hub that will make a whirling sound and print out only the sections of the newspapers that you want. This is going to be our reality, he said, in 20 years. It was the reality in 5.